Welcome to the Arrive Podcast, the U.S. Immigration Law Podcast for Canadians. My name is Jeremy Richards, along with fellow U.S. immigration lawyer Christine Jurusik. In today's podcast, we are going to introduce ourselves, and we are also going to provide a few examples of the topics of discussion that you should expect to hear from us when you join us on the Arrive Podcast.
My name's Christine Jurusik, and as Jeremy said, I am an immigration attorney practicing in the United States and practicing U.S. immigration law. I am also a Canadian citizen and also a citizen of the United States. I was born and raised in Canada in the Toronto area. I attended law school there, and I ended up marrying an American and moving to the U.S. And I did my own immigration at that time without any background information back when it was easy, back before 9/11. And now I enjoyed it so much, I decided to make it my life's work, helping Canadians make the move to the United States.
And I'm Jeremy Richards, also a U.S. immigration lawyer. I've been practicing immigration law for over 10 years now. And specifically, my practice or our practice has been around helping Canadians to work and live in the United States. And a lot of that has to do with our proximity to Canada. Our offices are right on the border of Canada next to the Peace Bridge. You can see the Peace Bridge right out of our office windows. So we deal with Canadians on a regular basis with many different issues, working in the United States, doing business in the United States, relationships with U.S. citizens, and we enjoy what we do, helping Canadians to work and live in the United States.
So we're just going to run through a few examples just of recent cases that we've had that may be of interest to some people that are listening today. For example, a lot of Canadians want to come and work in the U.S., and there's something called the USMCA, which is the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. It used to be NAFTA, and now we're dealing with the USMCA. So the status that a lot of people use as Canadians to come and work in the United States is the TN status, which used to stand for NAFTA, trade NAFTA, but now it is a USMCA status. It is a work status. It's based on the occupation you're working in. Whether you qualify is based upon your educational experiential credentials. But it's a great opportunity for many Canadians and Mexicans to come and work in the U.S. without having to go through a very detailed application process with the United States immigration authorities. They can make the application, Canadians can, right at the border. Just this week, I had a call from someone who had engaged a firm in the Toronto area to assist them with a TN application. She was coming in to work in a category of occupation as a management consultant, actually. And she made her application at the border based on the paperwork that was prepared for her by this Toronto firm. And she was denied because she had improper paperwork. She was not properly prepared for the interview she faced at the border. And she was pretty upset about it because she'd spent a lot of money and had engaged a firm that she thought was reputable for this. It turned out after speaking with her that she had only spoken with an immigration consultant and was not actually in contact with an immigration lawyer. Now, immigration consultants are licensed to practice and help people with Canadian immigration issues, but they are not able to assist on U.S. immigration issues. So she was improperly represented.
Yeah, and we see that a lot where people are denied because they receive improper legal advice in the application process. And when you apply for a TN visa or anything at the border, it leaves a permanent record with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. So if you go back to the border after that, they will see in the system that you attempted to enter the United States and that you were refused or denied entry. So it's important to receive proper counsel before you apply for anything at the U.S. border.
You definitely want to do it right the first time.
Yeah. Makes your life easier and saves you a lot of money too.
And keeps your employer happy too.
Yeah. And there's nothing more frustrating than thinking you're receiving good advice and then going and finding out you received very bad advice. And it can ruin your day, if not your future opportunities to live and work in the U.S. Another example of something we dealt with recently was a business owner who's coming to the United States to operate his business. He has a Canadian operation as well as a U.S. operation, and has been coming back and forth as a business visitor, and was stopped at the border trying to enter the United States and told he needs a work visa. And we see this a lot where a business owner in Canada has operations in the United States. And for years, they've come as business visitors, and they've been able to do so without any resistance at the border. And then a border officer asks a specific question that leads to the individual saying, "Oh, I own a business, I'm working there." Then they're shut down, they're refused entry, and the officer tells them that they need a work visa to do what they're doing. So this particular individual, because of the dual operations, would qualify for what's called an L1 visa. And that allows qualifying individuals of international companies with both U.S. and foreign offices to transfer managerial or executive personnel to the United States to manage those operations.
Another example of a case that we handled this week was a couple, U.S. Spouse and a Canadian spouse. And Canadian spouse had entered the United States as a visitor back before COVID started. And they decided to get married and to apply for a permanent residence here in the United States. Permanent residence sometimes here is also referred to as a green card because the card you get to evidence your permanent residence is actually green. So, colloquially, again, we use the term green card to represent that. But they applied for the green card. And we've noticed lately there's been a little bit of pushback in these types of cases where the officer is very concerned that the person who entered as a visitor had the intention to enter and apply for permanent residence when they crossed the border. And if that is the case, they can deny the application. So you got to be really careful with these types of applications in particular for spouses. But luckily, we were able to overcome that issue with this case, and they had a successful interview with the officer, and they were issued the green card, the permanent residence, for a period of 10 years here in the United States. So, even though there are some concerns and there could be some pushback from officers, which we're seeing more of lately, there are ways to overcome it if you have proper representation and good advice throughout the process.
Yeah, and we see those often because of the proximity of United States and Canada and the ease of transfer of people back and forth between the countries under the USMCA. Canadians are actually what is called visa exempt. They don't need a visa to enter the United States, just as U.S. citizens don't need a visa to enter Canada. You just need to present a valid passport, a valid Nexus card, what they call a WITI compliant document in order to go back and forth easily between the countries. So with that, we see a lot of relationships between Canadians and U.S. citizens. Either they get married or they could be a fiance and intend on getting married. But we see that a lot of those cross-border relationships. So these are the types of things that we see on a regular basis. Christine, what are some other things that we see that we deal with to give people an idea of the type of thing that we deal with on a regular basis?
So you mentioned business owners that have both Canadian and U.S. operations. We also see, people that aren't necessarily business owners right now interested in either starting up a new business here in the United States or purchasing an existing business here in the U.S. And both of those situations can result in a visa to allow you to come and work and manage your business here in the U.S., whether it's new or existing. And how it's done is very important. So you've got to make sure, again, that you have proper advice right from the start. You don't want to go getting engaged in a business purchase or starting a new company without speaking to an immigration attorney, near to the start of your thought process, because it very much how you structure these things and how you go about it can impact the availability of a visa for you. So you definitely want to have that conversation as early as possible.
Or you make that investment and then you show up at the border and you tell the border officer, "Hey, I'm going down to interview some people at to work for me in the U.S. And the officer says, "You're doing what? You're working? Where's your visa?" And then all of a sudden you're refused and you can't go down to this business that you just invested all this money in. So yeah, we see that often. So proper planning is definitely necessary for that if you're going to be doing business in the United States. Another one that we see all the time is the infamous snowbirds, right? Canadians that are trying to escape from the cold weather in Canada, and they want to go down to Florida. Florida seems to be the destination of choice for everybody in Toronto. I think everyone in Toronto has a residence in Florida as well. And questions about how long can I stay there? What can I do while I'm there? Typical questions that we see on a daily basis working with Canadians. So these are the types of things that we see. These are the types of things that we'll be discussing. Relevant topics about U.S. immigration law and how they apply to Canadians that are coming here for pleasure, for work, or whatever might bring them here to the United States. And also current events. Immigration law is changing on a regular basis. We see immigration law change daily, depending on the administration and the laws and the things that surround U.S. immigration law. So we hope that you will join us twice a month as we discuss U.S. immigration law topics for Canadians on the Arrive podcast. Thank you for listening and have a great day.